feel like this video is going to be an introduction to me joining leftist tube. I'm kind of excited about it, not gonna lie. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Zhariya Smith, and I'm gonna keep today's intro really short because there's a thing to do on my channel every now and then, and I like to make video essays. However, these video essays can sometimes be very long. My last one, the gentrification of Black culture, was 50-ish minutes long. So we're gonna try to zoom things through, but I want to do a quick little intro. Really quickly wanted to tell you guys today's candle is dragon fruit kiwi. Today's video is called The Illusion of the Embourgeoisement of the Working Class. I pray I'm pronouncing that right, because if not, this is going to get really embarrassing. But first, I'm going to dual sections. The first section is going to be talking about what embourgeoisement is. Then I'm going to be talking about who is the working class, what is considered the working class, and things that come along with the working class. Then I'm going to talk about the death of the American dream, because it kind of goes hand in hand, and you'll know in the video. Then I'm going to be talking about intersectionality and critical race theory. And then lastly, I'm going to be talking about eating the rich. So if you want to watch that, please do subscribe if you want to. And I now have a new ring light. I'm really excited about it. So we're just going to go ahead and go into the next section. Oh my God, hi. Welcome back to your regular scheduled programming. I'm trying out a new background, so let me know your thoughts. Also, I got a new wig. What are our thoughts? She's blonde and she's, everything you could ever ask for. So let me know your opinions on the new background. But let us get started with the embourgeoisement of the working class, or rather the illusion of it, rather. And this first section, I'm going to be asking, or you may be asking rather, what is embourgeoisement and why is she pronouncing that word wrong? I still honestly don't even know how to pronounce it. Let me look it up.
Embourgeoisement.
Embourgeoisement? Yep, that's what we're going with because that's what YouTube said. But what is embourgeoisement? Basically, granted, the word has existed for a while, and I'm not a sociology student at all. In fact, I took one sociology class, marriage and family, and I suffered through it. But apparently this guy named John Goldrope in 1967 wrote a paper, I believe it's like 20 something pages, called The Affluent Worker and the Thesis of Embourgeoisement. And this was in 1967. Basically, the theory, or the concept, is the migration of individuals that are in the working class or middle class or any class that's in the bourgeoisie and migrating to the bourgeoisie. However, this isn't necessarily with, daddy's money. It is doing it by your own hard work, which I think is very important. And I think as, an American myself and many other Americans watching this video, because the majority of my audience is American, and also Canadian, fun fact, but this is their own efforts and or collective action. And this was very popular, I believe, during the 1930s to 1960s, which is blah, 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 boring, I know. But I recently took a class for my degree, because yes, I am a college student. I'm not completely stupid. I took a class called Television and Cultural Studies, because I'm getting it from a media studies minor. That was a lot to come out of the mouth. And, essentially, we talked about in one of our classes about how in television we see the adoption of the middle class, and we see basically the normalization of being a suburban wife, and I Love Lucy and a bunch of different shows, to be honest. But essentially it was talking about how it kind of stressed an emphasis on going to college, because if you went to college, then you could make more money, and then you would be successful, and blah blah blah. Pretty cool and interesting, right? But this kind of process of people trying to work really hard to then leave the working class, which blah, who wants to work for the rest of their lives, we then see that there is an establishment of the middle class, which, as a girl who happens to be in the middle class right now, well, not me technically, because me right now, I don't make a lot of money. I don't make a lot of money at all. In fact, I'm a barista, so you can imagine how poor I must be. I say that as a joke. I'm not poor by any means, but I don't make a lot of money. However, my parents, that sounds like that. It feels like a viral tweet. I'm not rich, but my parents are. But my parents middle class, stand up people generally. And what's interesting about being in the middle class is that there is a very skewed perception of what middle class is. I think middle class is basically described as comfortable. Definitely not rich, but I feel like some people, when I was in school and growing up, people would say like, oh, you're in middle class, like you're rich, because my parents had like a 2-story house, which like that's middle class, weird stuff going on. But I think that this, making of the middle class made people kind of strive to want to be in the middle class. And there also was with embourgeoisement, however you pronounce that word. Basically, people were wanting to get out of their situation, and they're wanting to get out of, working every single day, because, working 60-hour weeks is not good for your health, like at all. But this migration, this want to, leave the working class, this want to, be the bourgeoisie, you want to be the rich that's getting eaten type stuff. I think that we're kind of ignoring something that's, pretty prevalent in our society. I'll say definitely in American society, because some countries don't have homelessness, but unfortunately we are not one of them. And people don't seem to realize that it's actually this whole illusion of the rags to riches story, the thought that, oh, you can achieve so much, is actually a lie. Who would have thought? Not me. Actually, I would have thought, because but yeah, so I think there is this illusion that a person can achieve everything that they want just by working real hard. And while that is the case for some people like Graham Stephan, Gary Vee, Dave Ramsey, I don't know, who else are rich people? I think Bill Gates. But while there are people that have, come from nothing and they've, been able to achieve so much, I will say that there's something that we are, missing, which is common whiteness of that. If you typically think about the amount of Black people that you've seen, Oprah, I would say, perhaps Kanye West, though his mom was a nurse or a doctor. I'm a horrible Kanye West fan. But generally, the Black people that are very successful have had some sort of leg up, which, isn't a bad thing. It definitely isn't a bad thing to have helpful parents and a helpful life. But I will say that giving this illusion of, oh, you can get out of poverty by just working really, really hard is just, it does a disservice to people. And I also want to note that, I'll give you an example because this may sound like really nihilistic. Well, I am a nihilist, very much. Nothing matters, but also everything matters type energy. I will say, in my personal opinion, there is a way for poor people or people that are living in the hood, the ghetto, the projects, etc. There is a way to get out. However, that way is a very, very, it's like, imagine, I think there was like a political cartoon that I saw where it was like the road that it takes for like people who are like white to do something versus the road it takes for people who are Black, and there's like spikes in the road and there's, hurdles and all this stuff. It's kind of like that, but also with poor people. And you want to know who is mostly poor? Or mostly, granted, I guess there are more white people, so of course there's gonna be more poor white people, but like the majority of the populations of these neighborhoods are minorities, and I do think that that's something that's very important. But let's say typical stock person in, the hood. I feel weird saying the hood, as even though I literally am Black, but imagine them trying to get out of, wherever they're doing. I think about specifically the movie Dope, which loved that movie. Such a really funny movie. You definitely should watch it. But I think the main character's name is Malcolm, and he really wants to get into either Harvard or Yale. I haven't watched this movie since like 2018. But he ends up, there's like a whole situation with that movie, but basically it's like saying that no matter how hard you try, I mean, I think he did get into Harvard in the end, but he's a rare case. Typically, these neighborhoods in these areas do not give you the best education, especially living in the South, like yours truly. Do I look like a Southern belle to you? I'm a Floridian. It's not really the South, but so I will say, you go to a school, but that school is a horrible school district. It could be a D school, an F school, and then you're trying to get, good guidance. You want to be able to get into schools, but a lot of schools, like, I live in Florida, so like UF, FSU are kind of like the big ones. UM also, but that's more so a private school, and UCF. Those are like the big schools I see everyone go to. There's also FAU, USF, FAMU. There's a lot of schools, but for the big ones, aka UF, FSU, and we'll say UCF for this example. A lot of times those, like, I think like last year, well, I guess not last year because 2020, but let's say 2019 when I graduated high school, the average GPA for the freshmen that they accepted was, I believe the GPA was around 4.2, maybe 4.5, you know, and a lot of schools, if you think about it, that are in these areas, the scale doesn't even go that high. You know, there are some schools where the GPA goes to 6.2. I saw it on TikTok, you know, believe it or not. TikTok is, you know, TikTok. But it's interesting. So these schools that don't even offer you, you know, the highest GPA you could possibly get to, you know, put a leg up. You don't have the ability to go to ACT or SAT prep courses, or have, you know, pay someone to take it for you to get into the school of your dreams, you know, or lie about being in sports. That's a whole other thing, whole other issue. But with all that aside and all that said, it is very hard and very difficult for people to be able to have the embourgeoisement. It's very hard for people to migrate to that essence. And while there are people that, you know, never went to college, succeeding, they open their tech company through their garage and that whole thing, I will say that it is just not quite easy for these people to have the embourgeoisement that we, you know, somehow believe is possible. And I do think that the rags to riches story is very nice, very sweet, very, you know, hopeful, because, you know, it's like, imagine, you know, growing up poor and being able to be like, look, mom, I can buy you a house. But also I will say that you see it with a lot of YouTubers, specifically the teen ones, like, I don't know who's some that were teenagers when they started, so like Bryce Hall, Tana Mojo, Jake Paul, Logan Paul. I don't think he was a teenager, but you see these characters, they're literally people, but characters, and you see them, you know, developing at a young age to becoming suddenly very rich very fast, and it's very, you know, chaotic and crazy. And yes, it is nice to get out of poverty. You still have a poverty mindset, whether you know, take a lot of conditioning and therapy to get out of that mindset. For this one kid that I did a whole tangent, but for this one kid, think about it. The only way they can get out is through, you know, sports scholarships and etc. But if they go through the sports route, they're probably going to end up with some neurological disorder that makes them very violent, like O.J. Simpson, allegedly. We don't know because he's not dead yet, and you need to like analyze their brain. But like having multiple concussions and having horrible health conditions and all this stuff, you know, just to get out of poverty. And it's like, if I have to get beat on just to like not be poor, I'd rather be poor. Actually, no, I probably would rather get beat on, because, you know, I have this whole thing where I'm like, I don't know if I would rather be poor. Like, I don't know if I want to be poor and like happy, or like rich and sad. It's a dilemma, because like if you're rich, you can buy things, but then like that, you know, more money, more problems. This striving to be the middle class, this middle class being comfort, is something that's really interesting to me. And I think there was a TikTok trend where it was like send me your house if you're actually in middle class. And it was like, you know, my middle class house, but the person had like 3 garages and a pool. Well, pool is kind of middle class, but like had like a movie theater and like all this stuff. And it was like, you're not middle class, you're definitely rich. But they're like, my parents technically are in the, you know, and it's like, okay, Richie. Now I will say that there is like no visible representation of what the middle class is, you know, generally, but it's just something to think about. And I think this kind of wraps up this section. I just will say, obviously, I'm not telling you to not achieve your dreams. I will be talking about the American dream later on in this video, which kind of, you know, goes hand in hand with embourgeoisement, but that's just like a fancy word, and we don't really need a fancy word, but, you know, it sounds better for the video title, you know. I gotta sound like I know at least something. Hi besties. What do you think about the blue? Are we rocking with the blue? I don't know. I also don't know why the blue is so much more intense than the pink was, but, you know, what do I know? Either way, this next section is going to be about the working class and what is considered the working class versus what is not considered the working class, so that you know at home. I don't know why I'm acting like this. But the working class is basically known as the laboring class, as in they do hard labor. So if you don't do hard labor, chances are you're not considered the working class. Basically, the working class comprises, and it's basically grouped up of all the individuals who do manual labor occupations, you know. Basically, they are waged or salaried contracts, and these occupants are workers that are blue collar. So if you're not a blue collar worker, technically you're not considered a working class member. I don't know why I said class member, like it's a club. It's not a fun club to be in. Personally, though my job isn't, blue collar, I will say that I consider myself working class because I do manual labor at work. A lot, actually. I come home in pain every single day, but it's worth that bag, that slightly above minimum wage bag. But I will say that some people don't seem to understand the differences between the colors. Just white collar, which is basically the finance jobs, the desk jobs, the office jobs. And then we have pink collar jobs, which are jobs that involve care, like being a nanny. I think nurses are included in pink collar, but basically it's all about like jobs that are like care jobs. Like us, like also maids are considered pink collar. But there is a blurred line between what is considered lower class, middle class, and upper class. Like I mentioned in the first section of the video, there was a whole discourse on TikTok over a girl saying she was middle class, and she had like I can try to find the TikTok, though it may be deep because this was like in March. But I can try to find it and put it on the screen. But I do want to just reiterate right now that just because you are in a white collar job or a pink collar job does not by any means mean that you are not struggling like Connor is in working class. You want to talk about your days in the fields? But I'm by no means saying that if you aren't doing manual labor that you're not doing real work, because you are all doing work whether or not you want to or not. But just because your body, you're not physically working like a person doing construction does not mean that you are not a worker and that you do not do work. But I do want to really quickly just tell you the differences between the different classes, because I do think it's important to know, and you can be like, hey, how poor am I? Which is always a fun breakdown. But basically, if you are lower class, this means that you make below $40,100 a year, means that you are low income. However, $41,000 to $120,400 is a middle class. And then also, if you make more than $120,000, you're technically considered upper class. And you can understand why we say upper class is a very, very big. We need to have another class. We need to have like upper class. But basically, people that are considered upper middle class would be kind of hitting that 80,000 mark. I do think that is very, because I feel like if you're considered a middle class but you're only making $42,000 a year, that's really not good conditions to be living in, especially if you live in places like not in the middle of nowhere. But I do have a lot of, issues when it comes to our class system and why we have classes in the first place. So this may make me sound like a commie. I personally don't care, but I think, we should not have people that are dying and homeless and starving when we have people that are literal billionaires projected to be trillionaires. It kind of is stupid. If you make an entire company for yourself to go to another planet, and that's like a sneeze for you, like them talking about the people that are so rich that they will sneeze and $1 million fall out of their pocket and they wouldn't even notice. These are the people that if they literally got robbed of millions of dollars, they would not notice the dip in their bank accounts. This is rich people we're talking about. And I do think that the class system, in my opinion, is kind of whack. I know I'm pulling out like 10th grade knowledge, but when I took AP World History, I do remember that in India they do have something called the caste system, and in the caste system it is nearly impossible for you to move up from it. And I think this is kind of similar to the working class now. I feel like if you are in the lower class, the only way to make yourself get up is really not even with you, it's more so your children. So it's like the goal is that your kids will make more than you do, and then their kids make more than they do, and then eventually hopefully your bloodline makes it out, but a lot of times it doesn't, which is really unfortunate. And you have generations that live within 10 miles of each other, which is not a bad thing. Like I don't say it's bad to live near family, but like I don't, period. But I do think that there is a issue, and obviously there's a classism issue. I do think that a lot of people that are in upper classes do look down on the lower class as if it's literally their fault. A good chunk of people that are in the lower class, a lot of times it's not really their fault that they're there. It's more so that they're stuck there, and it is virtually impossible to get out. Like I talk about in the section about what is embourgeoisement. We still don't know how to pronounce that word. This is literally a video essay and I don't know how to pronounce the words. You know, I can make the argument my first language isn't English, but I've also been speaking English for, how old am I? 20, so like 18 years. But you know, who knows? who can say? But I think that I think that people are so caught up with so many social issues that are happening right now that they don't seem to notice that the biggest issue that we can solve is the working class issue. I will be talking about this in a further section in the video, so if you want to hear me talk about eating the rich, feel free to continue watching, though I do have timestamps, so if you don't feel like watching this section, you know, you don't have to, but I would appreciate it because, you know, subscribe to me. I guess this is a good intermission point. Subscribe to me to get me out of the working class. That sounds so horrible, but I will say a lot of entertainers do not make a lot of money, so you know, it's the thought that counts, really. But there isn't a class consolidarity. It's always a debate. It's always a battle. I see so many times on TikTok and influencers in general literally argue about how much they make, or like, oh, I didn't make a lot this month, and you know, being a YouTuber is so hard and I'm crying in my mansion. And you know, it is hard for a lot of YouTubers I've seen getting houses, getting approved for apartments, because it's kind of like you can't really prove, like you say like, oh, I'm an entertainer on the internet, and it's like, oh, you do corn. I can't say the word, but you know, corn. Or you know, OnlyFans creators that are struggling to, you know, do different things because they don't have like a legitimate job, quote unquote. And I do think it's really interesting to, you know, mention, but also I think that people don't seem to understand that your best friend parents making $10,000 more than your parents is really not the big issue here, and you getting upset with them for having a elevator in their house is really not going to change the fact that they have an elevator in their house. I feel like we get so caught up over money, and I understand we need money to live, and most people don't even want to live in the first place, so they're working to do something they don't even want to do, you know. But I do think that we do need to understand, you know, and I don't want to sound like the big communist in the room, but I do think that we do need to band together just a little bit, and we need to kind of assess the different things that are happening with our class system and all of those things, because I do think it's really interesting that if a person did want to escape poverty, they would kind of have virtually no way to do so. And this is a conspiracy theory, this is alleged, but I think that the government wants it that way. Though you know, some people may make the argument that why would the government want to, you know, do welfare programs for people that are poor? Wouldn't they much rather people just have money? But like, I don't know, something fishy going on, because I feel like if the military budget can be let me get off of this topic before I have people in the comments yelling at me, but I do think that in general the systems that are against the working class are not good. Have you ever heard of credit, man? Credit didn't even exist till the 80s. I think actually the late 70s, but like credit didn't exist before. It was really just like a trust me bro type of energy, and it's like, I understand that, you know, it's a system that can be used to, you know, hey, maybe I shouldn't loan this person money since they have 3 evictions. But it's also like, you have to understand, I think that there should be like a conditional statement, like, hey, this person got evicted because their landlord scammed them, or this person didn't pay off a credit card because it was hard to pay the credit card bill, or this person did XYZ. And I don't think the credit companies will give you a big credit limit for you to spend it all and then crash your credit horribly, and then it takes you so long to get, you know, your stuff back. And you know, luckily I had a good credit score. I say had I have a good credit score because of my parents. I'm very grateful for, but that's another thing. That's a middle class luxury that some people do not get. Some people's parents put their bills under their kids' names and ruin their kids' credits before they can even be an adult, which if that's you, if you have a parent that did that to you, you can dispute that with the credit bureau and it will get fixed for you, because children do not have credit. So like that is not something that you can control. But being in the working class sucks. I really don't think anybody truly enjoys being in the working class. I guess if you're like an artist, or like you do something like, if you like building houses and you build houses for a living, that's like something. But I do think that we kind of are rude to people that are in the working class. Like, we don't understand how much they do. And this is similarly with like minimum wage workers. You don't understand how much they deal with, because it's like, oh, minimum wage, minimum effort. And it's like, oh, well, you know, if you wanted to actually make money, then you wouldn't work in a minimum wage job. But it's like, right now I'm a college student and I'm going to college for social media. Wow, that's so cool and fancy, funky and fresh. But trying to find a job in social media, to be a social media intern, assistant, analyst, specialist, there's a bunch of different names, but it asks for 3 years of experience and a bachelor's degree and sometimes a master's degree. And you have to understand, how can a person with a minimum wage job be able to afford going to college or being able to live in their college dorms area? Loans. You want to know what happens when they graduate? They have a bunch of loans they have to pay off. And sometimes they can't even get the job that they literally went to school for, because the jobs will say it's entry level, but entry level is like you need 4 years of experience. It's a constant loop. And this is why I have my issues with our current system that we have in place, because I think that it is very, very hard for people, hardworking Americans, they love to say that word. It's hard for them to actually get a leg up in life. Like, it very much is like by chance, and that's just something to think about, something to ponder on. I will say that the working class, though, are very, blue collar people are kind of looked down upon. And I do know, like, they're like jokes in the office, like, oh, we're white collar and you're blue collar, like you work harder than us, but we get paid to sit and do nothing. But it's like people that are in the working class literally have to fight to make money, and that's not even a lot. Like, granted, if you do construction for a long amount of time and then you make your own construction company, that's like one thing. But again, some people just have the ability to be able to save up, and some people have the ability to be able to be a hard worker and not sleep. And like Graham Stephan, some people can do that, but other people can't. Like, if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, I will die. Not die, that's very dramatic, but I need 8 hours of sleep. Well, really I need like 10, but I give myself 8. And I work really hard. I try my best to feed you guys. I try my best to give you guys the content that you so desperately crave from me. I have to appease you guys. But having to do that, having to do school, and having to do work are all 3 very intense things that take up a lot of my time. But I still do that because I try to find time to do things that I enjoy, but that's because I enjoy it. If I didn't enjoy it, I would not be doing this. Point blank, period. But in terms of the working class, this is a very, sporadic section, but I will say that the working class should be appreciated, and is appreciated by me and all the people that have homes and clean toilets and a working plumbing system, air conditioning. Like, we need blue collar workers. Blue collar workers are kind of the foundation of our society we got going on. So we should appreciate them. Appreciate your blue collar worker friends and your blue collar worker parents, because they are hard workers, like truly, genuinely. Like, it's a lot. Like, especially Amazon workers. Whew. I've been on Amazon worker TikTok recently, and man, Jeffrey Bezos needs to get it together. I guess he's not the CEO of Amazon anymore anyways, but whoever CEO, get that right, because there are people that are quite literally struggling and can't even sit working 10-hour shifts. That's capitalism, baby. Don't worry, this isn't one of those types of videos. I just wanted to do red because this section is the death of the American dream. Ooh, so ominous. So, for the death of the American dream, what's interesting is that I already have a video on the death of the American dream. It's very bad, but you're more than welcome to watch it, because I'm going to be talking about similar themes and topics. When it comes to the American dream, I have a lot of animosity. Me and the American dream have a lot of beef, because growing up, I always was under the assumption that, like, oh, by the time I'm 20, which I'm 20 now, which we're depressed. But I was like, by the time that I'm 20, if I work really, really hard, I'm gonna be famous, and I'm gonna be famous, and I'm gonna be rich, and I'm gonna be all of these things because I'm gonna work really, really hard, and I'm gonna achieve XYZ. It's good in theory, right? Well, wrong. No, I mean, like, the American dream is essentially the idea, similar to the embourgeoisement. Still, we don't know how to pronounce that word, but we're working through it. basically the American dream is the idea that if you come to America, this is more so like in the immigration standpoint, but also like if you're an American person and you come to America, you have so many opportunities and you can do so much. Kind of like the idea of like if you move to like a big city, suddenly your life's going to be a lot better, but in reality there are like rats and expensive apartments and like homelessness, like really bad. But in that same essence, it's like if you move to America, you are an American citizen. If you work really hard, you're going to be rewarded by capitalism and you're going to be rich. Similar concept, right? I was saying in the beginning of the video that definitely like there various similar parallels to it. But the thing about the American dream, though, is that unlike Embourgeoisement, still can't pronounce it, other than like that, the American dream is very focused on being American. I feel like in other cultures, it's really just like, oh, try hard and you might succeed. Whereas America is very like heavily like, you're an American. Welcome to America. You're going to do great things. And it's like, I guess, you know, but capitalism is just a rough one to deal with, you know. But the thing about the American dream is that this is kind of the rags to riches thing I was talking about earlier in the video. But also with the American dream, we see a lot of people that are rich. I guess mostly Leonardo DiCaprio characters, but you know, like The Great Gatsby. Like if you ever read that in like high school, you know, like it's very much about the negative impact of the American dream, or Wolf of Wall Street, or Of Mice and Men, Death of a Salesman. Like it's very much anti American dream. Like your dreams will definitely not be fulfilled by, you know, working really hard, and sometimes working really hard will make you work yourself to your grave. So be mindful, be careful of your health. But what we don't understand, and I definitely did mention this in my other video, that something of like the majority of people that are in lower class do not escape lower class. In the off chance you may get a chance to go to some college that's, you know, great, you know, you get into some school and you work really hard, but then also, like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to terms of trying to find a job after graduating is really, really hard. There's actually, I don't know the percentage, but it's like a lot of college graduates are like, can't find jobs because the entry-level jobs are requiring 7 years of experience. It's craziness. And you think when there's a working crisis, because like a bunch of people died, that they would, you know, like let people get a little bit of leniency when it comes to jobs, but nope, still as rough as ever. But the American dream is so deeply ingrained, but also I feel like people don't seem to understand that while this is pushed to people that are immigrating to America, that if you come to America, things are going to be so much better. And it may be better in terms of conditions of like your country. Like if you live in somewhere that's war torn with a crazy dictator, you know, that's something different. But I mean like people that are coming from like Canada and like the UK and like Australia and New Zealand, like you're better off where you are. Like do not come here like for your sake, you know, unless you're like an actor. I guess there are some perks to being an actor if you come to America, but like we have this false idea. This is kind of like if you think about during the gold rush and people are like, oh my God. And even like after the gold rush, like I'd say like, I think it was World War II. Yeah, because that was when, yeah. So I'd say after World War II, people believed that the streets in America were like paved with gold. Can you imagine? Like people were legitimately believing that we were like El Dorado. Can you imagine? But all of that aside, the American dream is interesting to me because, well, as an American myself, I would say that like I am lucky to like be in America because I could, you know, be in like a war-torn place like in Rwanda or Burundi. I could be in Syria, I could be in Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, the places that are going through, you know what they're going through. There are places all over the not the US, but places all over like the world right now that are struggling. And I'm so lucky to be in a place where, you know, I don't have to worry about, you know, a bomb being dropped on my head, you know, when I wake up the next day. But I will say, disclaimers and all of that complaining aside, let's talk about first world problems. No, but I just mean like in terms of the people that are escaping to America, that is one thing. I'm 1,000% for immigration. Like, please come here. Like, if you feel safer here, absolutely do that. If you want bigger, better opportunities, you know, come here. I have no issues. The more the merrier, you know. But I will say that in media, like we see The Great Gatsby, like we definitely know that the American dream is fake. we definitely know that the American dream is not real. Like, it's a dream for a reason. But for some reason, people still believe it, and people will still, have that ingrained so deep in them that magically they will just become rich through hard work and determination, which is just not true. Which, like I said, the Embourgeoisement, still can't pronounce it. I think it's mostly because I have like I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I have a lisp. And lisp, yep, see, there we go again. It's very hard sometimes to manage words. Yeah, but all that aside, I will say that it is interesting with the American dream. Tell kids that, you can achieve your dreams if you try really hard, which I think is a good message to give to children because kids are pretty depressing. But telling them that they have a purpose and that they can do things in life is definitely positive. But I do think, how can you tell kids that the American dream is horrible and give them all these books to read and literature, but then in the same breath, you'll tell them that, like, you can achieve your dreams? It's very contradictory, very much not a vibe. Sorry if the camera keeps on changing. My phone's doing that thing again where I try to film for a really long time and then it starts shutting down on me. But 10.3% of Americans make more than $20,000 a year, which is not considered rich. It is considered upper class, but in my personal opinion, I think if you're making $200,000 a year, that is a lot of money, definitely. But if that is, let's say, a familial income and you have 2 kids or 3 kids and you have to pay for their schooling, fancy little extracurriculars, SAT prep classes, if you are one of the parents that pay for your kids' tuition, that money goes away really quickly. But basically 65.9% of Americans make less than 100K, which is still considered middle class, I believe, if I remember correctly from the last section. But I think that people don't understand that there is a huge class barrier when it comes to the American dream, and that while you can achieve your dreams if you try hard, sometimes you try hard and it's still not enough because you don't have daddy's money, or you don't have that little sorority thing that you were in, or you're like, it's like little things like that, that you just have to be. I think that there are inflated expectations of what America is in general. I think it's similar to like people romanticizing moving to LA or New York. Like, those places are pretty, yes, but they're also really horrible places, and the crime rates are up the wazoo. The homeless population is gigantic, and in New York they have rats the size of chihuahuas. So I personally wouldn't want to live, I do want to live in New York, but I personally wouldn't want to risk my life just to live in a place that's slightly nicer, in terms of that. But I think that we also don't understand that with schooling and kids going to school, that some schools literally just don't even have the resources to be able to tell kids, like, hey, this is how you get out of here. And it's basically like a constant loop that people just don't get over. And when it comes to classism, people that are in middle class areas, they are able to let their kids do extracurriculars, and they're able to let their kids do all of these things. And lower class people can't do that. They don't have the ability to be able to let their kids have those opportunities, which I think is really unfair. I think stuff like that should be free, genuinely. Like, you shouldn't have to pay for your kid to do the pee-wee football. You shouldn't have to pay for your kid to do any sports in school, really. I think that this sports stuff should be provided by the school, unless it's like the little bags and stuff like that you don't really need for like the sport. I think that schools should pay for that. They should pay for their athletes, but more often than not, you will stay in the class that your parents started you off in. And we can aspire to get out. Like, my parents are obviously middle class, so I want to be upper class, but it is really hard, and it's really hard to break through that glass ceiling, essentially. And while we do see that a lot of people are exploited heavily in terms of people that are poor, like, it is so unfortunate the amount of like viral videos of someone like, I pretended to be homeless for a day, and we'd like, I wanted to see who would give me money. And it's like, you have the luxury to be able to just sit and pretend to be poor, but there are people that are actually like in the streets, like dying every single day, that are struggling to survive. And instead of giving those people the money that you would have made off of that video, you decide to make the video and then make another viral video that's on the trending page, and it's so stupid. And I think that there's just a huge disadvantage that I feel like people are just literally glossing over in terms of the American dream. And obviously there's a whole race thing, which I'm going to get into race in the next section of the video, don't you worry. But I think that poorer families have this idea, this escapism almost, to get out of their position that they're in. They want to so bad, but they might not even have the opportunity to be able to do so. So they sell this idea, they sell this dream to their kids, and these kids, hopefully, fingers crossed, they make it to college, they're able to get their FAFSA in line, they're able to, go to school. It's still not guaranteed that if you get your bachelor's degree, you will be successful, because there are plenty of people. I have coworkers that have 2 bachelor degrees and they still work where they work. Now, granted, that's because of the system. It's not because of them. Obviously, get your degrees, education. I strongly encourage education and I encourage critical thought. So, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if you get your bachelor's degree, that's definitely not, like you can't get a lot of things from having your bachelor's degree anymore. The bachelor's degree is a new high school diploma, and obviously getting your master's is very, very expensive. Now, if you got your bachelor's in psychology, you couldn't then become a therapist. Like, you have to go, to more school. And I just think it sucks. Like, the American dream is not what it cuts out to be, like, at all. And I think that people need to understand that. They need to get their eyes opened, because let's talk about in my other video I did talk about millionaires and billionaires, but I'm gonna briefly touch on them because I did talk about them before. But basically, for millionaires, 20% of them inherited their money. You might be saying, oh, that means that they didn't, that means that they must have worked for their money, right? No. The majority of them come from middle class or upper middle class households and then become the millionaires, which a lot of millionaires, the average age is 62 still, I believe, from my last video, and 38% of millionaires are 65 and older, which means they're millionaires basically because of their retirement fund, because inflation, so it's like, really, these millionaires you're seeing on social media and you're seeing them all the place, they're not common at all, and billionaires is even worse. Billionaires have a total of $5 trillion right now. So all of the billionaires in the world right now have an accumulated wealth of $5 million. 5 trillion, sorry, trillion. So my head hurts thinking about how much money that is. 30% of billionaires made some of their wealth themselves, which means basically, this is Kylie Jenner's, like, they did definitely, because Kylie, obviously it's Kylie Jenner, but Kylie Jenner, also didn't have money, just wasn't given to her. She did have to try a little bit, to have her business. 13.3% inherited their wealth entirely, and 55.8% of billionaires are considered self-made. However, self-made does not really mean much to me anymore. Once I learned that self-made does not necessarily mean they built themselves up from the ground, I felt hurt. But I'm calling this section the death of the American dream, because I do think that we, as a society, whatever society is, should realize that the American dream is a big fat lie. Not a big fat lie, but I think that we do need to acknowledge that some of these ideas that we're being fed through media and through, people, textbooks and whatnot, that we shouldn't just believe them for face value, and we should be just slightly skeptical when someone tells us that if we work really hard, we can be our own boss, and this is the MLM territory we're hitting in. Like, I feel like people get sucked into scams so easily because people get sucked into scams so easily because they get told this idea that, oh, I can become rich if I do this MLM or I do this pyramid scheme, and then they end up losing more money than what they had, which is really depressing. People get into credit card debt because they think about fake it till you make it. There are so many influencers right now that are poor, that are millions of subscribers, $1 million homes, and they're literally poor. They have no money to their name, essentially, because they don't know how to manage their money. They don't know what's going on. None of us know what's going on, really, but that's just something to think about. But yeah, so the American dream is definitely false, definitely fake. And I will say there are people that have adhered to the American dream. The American dream was established in like the 50s, nuclear family type vibes. Which also, for those that were curious, I did a community post a little bit ago and I asked, I didn't film this video yet, but I posted a picture and I was like, guess what the video is about? And I do realize I'm so sorry. I definitely misled you guys. I picked the wrong picture fully. I'll show you the picture. I'll show you the post. This video is definitely talking about the American dream, the nuclear family structure. However, I derailed this video completely. That is my own fault. I should have been more prepared. Should have filmed the video, then made the post. But you know, who am I? I'm new at this. I say that, but I've been doing this for 3 years. But but yeah. So, but definitely, like when I have the picture of the nuclear family, my thought process was middle class, and middle class, being able to graduate from being in the middle class, or even coming from lower class to middle class. It's definitely like the migration, and I fluffed up that post. I'm very sorry, but all you guys were right in guessing that picture. But yeah, so the American dream is dead. R.I.P. We love her. We miss her very much. But yeah. But anyways, let's chat about paragraph 4, aka critical race theory and intersectionality, or rather intersectionality and critical race theory. Two things, fun, funky, and fresh. So intersectionality is basically the interconnected nature of social categories such as race, class, gender, as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So, for instance, if we think about privilege and, you know, rights and all that stuff, you think about, okay, well, first, obviously, your race is the first thing that people will notice. Your race definitely is the first indicator, and then it's going to be your gender. After gender, it will definitely be your class, in my opinion. And then after class, it is going to be sexuality. Now, it definitely could be different depending on the person, but that's pretty much how I understand intersectionality as. But basically, this thought process is that people of different categories have different levels of struggles, different levels of oppression, different levels of things that are going on. So like, for instance, I am a Black woman who is of the alphabet mafia variety, and I'm middle class. So I may get different privileges than someone who is a straight Black woman, or let's say, for instance, a straight Black man. A straight Black man may have a different result than a white straight woman, and so on and so forth. But definitely, Black men that are of middle class or upper class are treated way differently than Black men that are of lower class. You kind of get the vibe, right? So basically, this is kind of like the thing where like gay white men will be like, oh, I'm oppressed too. But it's like, yes, you are. But also, there are different levels, because you're still white before you are anything else, just how I am Black before I'm anything else, you know? Because that's the first thing someone's going to see. And I guess gender also kind of plays into that, but you know, gender expression is a little bit different these days. But yeah, so when we talk about intersectionality, I think that we need to note that this isn't something that's like, oh, you know, you're racist because of XYZ. Like, it's not. It's just, you know, something that everybody notices, but something I guess no one ever like truly puts a little lens on it and tries to analyze it. But critical race theory. Now, Noah Samson made an amazing video about critical race theory that I definitely recommend you watching. Also, Khadijah, they also made a video that I recommend you watching about critical race theory, but I'm going to give you guys a quick little rundown of critical race theory. Essentially, it is basically a movement, a thought process, a theory, you know, that's what theories are, about how we examine the intersection of race and U.S. law, and we basically it's challenging American liberal approaches to criminal injustice and racial injustice and whatnot. So basically, critical race theory is not racist towards white people. I don't know who came up with that notion, you know, about how critical race theory is going to rot the minds of our children. It's literally just looking at, for instance, a good example that I tell people when they don't know what critical race theory is. I would say that it's basically, you were in school and you learn about slavery. You hear slavery ended, but did it really end? No, because instead of slavery, they just, you know, made the prison industrial complex that we have today. So it's not necessarily saying that, well, racism is bad. I was going to say racism bad, but basically it's saying that, and like, we understand that slavery is ended and so indentured servitude is over. But what we don't understand, what people don't seem to realize, is that while slavery is over, there are no enslaved Black people currently in the US, to my knowledge, that's legal. But instead, we have different programs and different systems that have been put in place to, in a way, enslave Black people, and people of color, rather, because it's not just about Black people, and it's interesting to me because I feel like people hear critical race theory and they immediately think, oh my God, they're gonna murder our kids. Well, not murder our kids. That was really dramatic of me to say. But that's what's interesting to me. And I think that when we talk about the embourgeoisement, I think I got it that time, of the working class and the illusion of it, rather, that we talk about people being able to come from rags to riches. We hear those stories. We hear Jay Gatsby. We hear all of these things. Oprah Winfrey and Jeff Bezos. The American dream does not apply to minorities. It applies to white people. Everything in our history, every single thing that we think about in terms of success and all that stuff, they talk about white people, but they give you the illusion that includes people of color because of quote unquote equality, though equality does not exist. Because if I were to go to apply to the job, the same job as a white person, or I wouldn't say white person, but of a white sounding name, because I have an ethnic name. I was graced by my parents of giving me an ethnic name. But I feel like if a person were to look at a job application and see Zhariya Smith next to, I don't know, Bethany Goodwin, I don't know, that's a random last name, they're probably going to pick Bethany Goodwin, or Goodwin's a weird one. Let's say Bethany Brown. They're probably going to pick Bethany Brown over Zhariya Smith because Bethany Brown sounds like, oh, she might be promising, and Zhariya Smith sounds like a ghetto ratchet woman, unprofessional and whatnot, which is a whole other thing. And I have a whole video essay. My actual last video essay that I did was the gentrification of Black culture. If you want to watch that, you're welcome to do that. That's what channels are for. But we see that, like, for instance, I'm a Black person, but I also, wear wigs and sew-ins. Well, sew-ins, I'm kind of on a, me and sew-ins are currently beefing right now, so we're wearing wigs these days, but I wear wigs, and some people may say that I have a certain amount of privilege because I wear wigs, and I have lighter brown skin than other Black people do, which, the technical term is brown skin, I've been told, I've been called, but I will say that people say, oh, I have an inherent privilege because I wear wigs instead of wearing my natural hair, which in reality I don't wear my natural hair out because, man, if you have 4C hair and you wear it every single day, you're better than me, you're stronger than me, because my physical arms will be in pain after just detangling my hair after washing it. Actually, just washing my hair is like a task. It takes like an hour for me to like fully thoroughly wash my head, so not really the vibe I'm trying to go for, these days. But I do wash my hair though. That is, but I'm just saying it just takes like a lot for me to wash my hair. And then it's like washing my hair and then styling it. It's too much. We just sprayed it down and we put the wig on and then we move on about our day. But some people will say that, oh, I have a different privilege because of that, because if I was a, commentary YouTuber that didn't have, wigs on, you can make the argument that my channel wouldn't be as big, or maybe it would be bigger because I would have my natural hair, and you'd be like, oh, Black woman with an opinion, and you click on the video. It's all relative. But I will say that we look at different people and we look at how race and things are combined, and I feel like that a lot of people get very much defensive over like race when it comes to their privileges. Like I had a friendship that sadly, well, I guess in a good way, ended, and the person didn't seem to understand like the volume of what white privilege is, because white privilege is not just oh, you're white, here are some things. No, white privilege is the fact that your race does not matter in everything that you do, because immediately whenever I do anything, I'm a Black such and such, whereas if you're a white person, you're the default. Kind of like if you are a man, you are a default. Like I found out recently because of a TikTok that apparently men don't have specialized doctors to go to about like their sexual health stuff. Like, how women go to like the GYN? Men don't have that. That's just primary care. Like, what? I am so utterly shocked by that. And when I saw that TikTok, I was like immediately shook to my core, because like, what do you mean? Like men's health is a default, kind of like how being white is the default. And I think that people don't seem to understand that there are systems in place to deter people of color from getting things, whereas the systems were made for white people to succeed. So it's not saying that you get better things or you are suddenly given something because you're a white. It is more so that the system that's put in place is making it easier because you're a white. For those, conservatives at home, I say at home, that are scared of their kids learning about critical race theory and how it's going to poison their minds, critical race theory is not going to poison their minds. If anything, it's going to encourage critical thinking, because we want to be against racism. We don't want racism to continue. So we gotta teach the kiddos modern forms of racism, like the prison industrial complex or modern rap culture right now, which that's a whole other video, whole other topic. How that whole thing is literally a whole other video I'm not even gonna get into, but I'm just saying, I think that in terms of the embourgeoisement of the working class, that it is easier for a white person to be able to get out of, those things. But also I will say that a white person is more likely to not be in poverty in the first place. While the majority of white people do take up the lower class, it is mostly because there are more of them. Black people are only 14% of the population. That fluctuates all the time, but when you think about 14% of the population, however, there are more white people in the world, in America. However, why is it that 50% of black people, I think it's not 50%, I think it's like 40 something percent of black people are currently in jail? They're not more violent, they're being targeted. Just like how there are more black people in poverty. Like if you go to like a neighborhood that is, in the ghetto, you'll see more black people than you do white people, even though there are more white people. So like, why wouldn't there be more white people in the, it's because those areas were made, and that's critical race theory, literally, that black people were being forced into poverty. Like it's like hard out here for a pimp like myself. And I got lucky. Like I said, like I grew up in a middle class home. I went to a private school for a good chunk of my life. Like I had it good, but it's important to acknowledge these things, and it's important to acknowledge your privilege, and acknowledging your privilege is not an attack to yourself because you cannot control it. But folks at home, please don't attack me. I like to encourage critical thinking and not attacking me, because I'm quite sensitive, believe it or not. In conclusion, eat the rich. I did purple because purple means royalty. I will say I'm not an advocate for cannibalism. I don't personally identify as a cannibal. I wouldn't say that I'm a part of the cannibalism community. Neither is Connor. Let us know your thoughts. Riveting. But I will say, all jokes aside, I do think that we do need to address the issues that are happening in our society, whatever society is. And I do think that we need to analyze just a little bit about why things happening. As I do, want critical thinking. I do enjoy having little debates in the comment section of my videos. However, debates are not just hate comments, so please don't leave hate on my video. Or I guess do, because that gives me engagement. But also I want to note, this jacket is not real fur. I do not wear animals. This is fake, and it is from Hot Topic, and it was like $10 because I used to work there. Fun fact, I used to work at Hot Topic. I look like it, don't I? But I will say it is really funny seeing the trends of eat the rich and we need to tax the billionaires and all this stuff, because I do believe we need to tax the billionaires. And while it would be riveting for us to bring back the guillotines, I don't think that we're gonna Marie Antoinette anybody anytime soon. Also, I don't even know how I would react to a public execution. That seems kind of intense, very barbaric, very scary. But I brought out the jacket because this is the end of the video, kind of. I just want to talk about just eating the rich. I will say it's a fun concept. It's a funny little meme, and I do think that we do need to, instead of make jokes, let's perhaps let's vote people into like the politics into office, rather, that will help just a little bit in terms of the whole taxing situation and making sure the billionaires and whatnot cannot have loopholes. because I don't want anybody in the comments thinking that I'm talking about the person that's making $2 million a year, even $5 million a year, living in New York City. Like, I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about the people that are so rich that if they sneezed, $1 million would fall out of their pocket. These people are so rich that they could pay for the US military's budget. These people are so rich that they could literally wipe out student loan debt. Like, these people are so rich, it honestly makes me sick to my stomach, like how rich some of these people are. And that is what I'm talking about. I think it's unfair that these people haven't paid taxes. Like, Donald Trump hasn't paid taxes. Jeff Bezos, because of losses, didn't pay any taxes last year. And I'm like, he should be paying some this year though, because if he doesn't, the guillotines are coming. Snip, snip. I actually don't think it makes a snip noise. I think it makes more of like a chink, like chonk, like noise. I know I've been talking for a long time, but this is the end of the video. I love you if you watched it this long. I like to make video essays. I'm probably gonna do this like maybe once every like couple months, because this is like a lot of effort. I've been researching this video for a hot minute, and it took me like 2.5 hours to record this. It is not dinner time. My stomach is rumbling as we speak. Can you hear it? Actually, probably not. But my stomach is rumbling. I am going to eat dinner, and I'm going to take a long shower and a nap. But if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, because it does help little channels like mine just a little bit. Subscribe to me if you like me, please. You better like me, because if you watch this far, you must like me just a little bit. And also make sure to comment down below. It really just helps with channels like mine. It makes YouTube think that I'm worth something. And if people are engaging with it and talking to me, YouTube might like it. Let me know your opinions on this new background if you like it. I like my new colorful light, actually. What's so cool about this light? It sounds like an ad, but like literally, like it changes colors. I feel like one of those, sorry, this is a lot. Okay, if you have epilepsy like myself, I'm sorry I had to subject you to that. But yeah, I should probably just make the light normal. Hi. Oh my God. So that's it. That's all I have to say. Literally, comment down below. Let me know your opinions. I'll be making a community post that you guys can also reply to if the comment section does get a little bit too frantic. From me and Connor, my boyfriend. I hope you have an amazing day, or night, or whatever time you're watching this. And make sure to stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe. Please, please. Oh my God. Times are crazy these days. You know. But yeah, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.